A lot of the time, sequels fail to capture the magic of their predecessors, leaving many of us disappointed and wishing they would have left our favorite films alone. Despite this, there are still some movies that I think actually deserve to have a sequel, as long as they're executed with the same passion and thought as the originals. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some films that I'd be excited to see a sequel for, and we'll just pretend the industry wouldn't screw them up. Let's dive in. Dredd takes place in Mega City 1, a vast and violent city where criminals run the streets and millions of people live in huge concrete skyscrapers to protect themselves from the dangers of this very dystopian future. The world has very little hope, and cops called judges act as a judge, jury, and executioner. Dredd is one of those judges. Him and his new trainee get trapped in one of the concrete towers after investigating a crime, and it just so happens to be run by Mama, a powerful drug lord. Dredd and Cassandra the rookie must fight their way to the top of the building to take out Mama and escape. As awesome as this concept is, when the film came out in 2012, it only made $41 million on a $45 million budget. It's really a shame that more people didn't see this film because it's an absolute blast and has an incredibly specific vision that it captures so well. The world is brutal and the atmosphere fits it so perfectly. The combat has plenty of variation, from slow-mo shootouts to intense scenes with flashbangs going off, tear gas filling stairways, miniguns firing across the tower, and so much more. If you love action movies, this is an absolute must-see. It only has a runtime of an hour and a half and is paced extremely well. There's no filler scenes and it never lets up from start to finish. Even though this film didn't capture the attention it deserved upon release, it has become much more appreciated since then. The world of Dredd is huge and there's plenty of directions a sequel could go in. Will we ever see those ideas come to life? Sadly, it seems unlikely due to the way the film performed upon its initial release, but I'm still hoping one day we'll get the sequel that Dredd deserves. There's been rumors of a Dodgeball sequel for years now, but it's been over 20 years since the original film released, and we have yet to see anything official. Dodgeball saw huge success back in 2004 when it brought in over $168 million on a $20 million budget. The film follows a group of misfits from a failing gym who enter a dodgeball competition to gain enough money to keep their favorite gym open and out of the hands of the corporate health fitness chain Globo Gym. The odds are stacked against them, but with retired Dodgeball all-star Patches coaching the team, they might just have a chance to pull it off. This film captures early 2000s comedy movies perfectly. It's crude, vulgar, and full of ridiculous moments. The cast is stacked and each character adds their own uniqueness and humor to the story. It's full of quotable lines and is so silly that you can't help but laugh. These are the kind of comedy movies we don't really see today, and bringing this crew back together for a sequel would be such a blast. If the sequel isn't afraid to be as crude and in your face as the original, then I don't see how it wouldn't be successful. It's obviously been over 20 years, but they could definitely play into the fact that these characters are much older this time around. Honestly, the world needs a goofy movie like Dodgeball to bring back the type of comedy films we used to love. It could really be the perfect time for a sequel to this classic. The Nice Guys is a film I'm still surprised never received the attention it deserved. It's a classic buddy action movie that follows Ryan Gosling as Holland March and Russell Crowe as Jackson Healy. The two are completely opposite. March is a goofy private detective that's not really good at his job, and Healy beats people up for a living. The two are brought together to solve the disappearance of a young woman, but quickly find out that others are looking for her, and they are very dangerous. The film spirals into a massive conspiracy involving the American auto industry and the Department of Justice. This is one of those films you watch and never want it to end. The chemistry between Gosling and Crowe is fantastic, the script is clever and funny, and the action sequences are all great. It's directed by Shane Black, known for directing Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Iron Man 3, as well as writing Lethal Weapon. You can tell in The Nice Guys how he uses his previous work to really craft the perfect story from the time period location, plot, action, humor, and characters, it really nails all of it. The different genres blend perfectly, and it's honestly a hilarious comedy, maybe even one of the funniest in the last 10 years. Even with how well executed everything in this film is, and reviews being excellent as well, it still managed to underperform in the box office, only bringing in around $71 million on a $50 million budget. Looking back at other films released around this time, I think The Nice Guys just got buried by all the more big budget, spectacle type of films like Captain America and X-Men. I guess it's true that Nice Guys do finish last. Since its initial release, a lot more people have seen the film and finally recognize how great it truly is. So maybe now would be the perfect time for a sequel. Audiences seem to be a bit burnt out on the superhero franchise film type of movies, and having a more simple comedic buddy action movie with a great story might just be what people want to see. Cloverfield has had 2 other films released, but neither are direct sequels to the original. They basically just exist within the same universe. Cloverfield hit theaters in 2008 and took audiences by surprise. Not only because the film came out of nowhere and had very little information before its release, but also because it turned out to be an awesome monster movie. The film follows a group of friends in Manhattan trying to survive a monster attack while also trying to rescue a friend trapped on the other side of the city. The plot is very straightforward, but everything surrounding it is what makes the film so unique. It holds many mysteries, from the backstory that was built during the marketing of the film to what the monster is or where it even came from. The first film used found footage to give a sense of realism, and unlike a lot of other found footage films, actually use it to enhance the story. The CGI even today looks great and was really ahead of its time. You can't have a great monster movie without a great monster, and the design is fantastic in this film. It has a face that almost resembles a piranha that has sacs on each side of its head that inflate and recede back. It has enormous front legs that can crush anything in its path, with smaller legs in the back that allow it to move quickly. The design overall is terrifying, and there's not really any other movie monsters out there that can match its size and unique look. The Cloverfield universe has so much potential, and with such a special monster, it really deserves a true sequel. The first film has a somewhat ambiguous ending, and if you've seen it, you're probably curious to know what happens next. There's so many unanswered questions about this world that a sequel could really go in a ton of different directions. I think going back to what made the first film so special and expanding on that would be really cool to see, and there's no doubt that fans would pack the theaters to see what happens next. This is another film that surprisingly hasn't received a sequel and has had rumors surrounding one since its release back in 2009. The film takes place on Earth, where aliens have arrived not to conquer or give aid, but rather to find refuge from their dying planet. The aliens are kept separate from the humans and live in District 9. The group managing them doesn't care about their welfare, but rather about mastering their technology. A field agent visiting the district contracts a mysterious virus that begins to alter his DNA, forcing him to hide in District 9 among the aliens. The story is extremely fascinating, heartbreaking, and relevant even today. It's one of those films that if you haven't seen it in a while, you remember it being great, and if you go watch it again, it totally holds up. The character arc we see from protagonist Vigus Vandermeer is excellent because we see him not only physically change into an alien as the film progresses, but also see him mentally change his perspective on them. It's this gradual shift that really drives the story and is executed so well. What makes District 9 stand out even more is that it doesn't use the aliens as a threat like many alien films do, but rather presents them as vulnerable and mistreated. By doing this, it puts the audience on the side of the aliens from the get-go. On top of all of this, the film has plenty of action and a great style that really immerses you into the world. If we ever get a sequel, I hope it continues Vigus Vandermeer's story, because the ending to District 9 is left wide open. The film was a huge success and has received praise since its initial release. With how relevant the original film is, a sequel certainly wouldn't feel out of place even 15 years later. A lot of the time, I don't get very excited for sequels, and with how many remakes, reboots, and sequels we've seen fail, it's always a bit of a gamble on if they'll be any good. Even with this in mind, there are still some movies that I can't help but want a sequel to. As long as they're made with the same thought and passion as the originals, then I would love to see them come to life. The key to making a solid sequel, in my opinion, is staying true to the source material and not forgetting what made the first film such a success. It's important to respect what came before. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the films I mentioned, as well as what other movies you'd like to see sequels for. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.